Okay, hello everyone. Sorry we had a small technical problem, but we're back. Hello, Professor. And so let's move to, we have some slides that Professor Murphy would like to share with us. So where is this?
This is in Boston. Yeah, so I was saying I grew up in Massachusetts, north of Boston. That's on the East Coast, northeast United States. And yeah, so this is from a trip that I took back there with my wife, Winifred, who's from Taiwan, and my daughters, Alana and Florence. And this is a sculpture of the ducks from a very famous in the U.S. Children's book called Make Way for Ducklings. And actually, in the next slide, we can see the cover of the book. Yeah, this is an award-winning book by Robert McCloskey, and it's yeah, I love this book. I still love this book, and it has beautiful pictures of Boston, and it's about the adventures of these ducks trying to cross a road, and they're getting help from a policeman. Yeah, but maybe we can go back to the picture. Yeah, so one of our themes today is literature and travel, and I think there's a special way in which literature can enrich your traveling experience, and also places are enriched by literature. Both, if you've read literature about that place, but also sometimes if a place is famous for literary reasons, the literature gets kind of written into the landscape in a sense, right? And that's what's happened here, is that this book is so famous in the U.S. and in Boston that and major scenes in this story take place in the public gardens. This is the public gardens in Boston, and so this is a kind of monument to the book. And yeah, kids, you can interact with it, right? You can sit on the ducks, and the public gardens are also famous. If we could go 2 slides forward for special boats. Special boats called swan boats. Right? You can see the. I am there with my daughters on a swan boat, and the swan is in the back of the boat. You can see another boat in the background, and the conductor of the boat sits back there and pedals. And actually, little known fact is that these boats were inspired by Wagner's opera Lohengrin, which has swan boats in it. Anyway, so this is a kind of a cultural aspect, feature of Boston, and kids love these boats, and the boats are featured in Make Way for Ducklings. Yeah.
I will leave a copy of Make Way for Ducklings with Christine. So students, if you're interested in this story, please visit Christine's office in the LC building.
Excuse me, Andrew, can you say the book's name again? Some students are... Yes.
Oh, Make Way for Ducklings.
Yes,
and I told you I was going to share some puns with you. So I think the first pun that I made in Chinese, maybe not the first, is I joked to my daughter when she was maybe only about 4 or 5. I said, would you like to read Make Way for Ducklings? And Make Way means rose, right? And my daughter likes flowers and stuff. And anyway, she thought this was so funny. She was laughing. Anyway, we like to pun in our house. So, yeah. So we still refer to this book now as Make Way for Ducklings. So you are speechless. So.
Yes, I was thinking about whether there are flowers in the story, actually.
Oh yeah, there are some flowers.
I think there are flowers in the story.
Sure,
yes.
there are, yeah.
So maybe we move to the next.
We could go on a bit. Yeah. So so we're still on the theme of literature in the Boston area. So there is a town in the suburbs of Boston called Concord, And Concord is one of the most famous, I would even say sacred, literary towns in the United States. It's where Walden Pond is, where Henry David Thoreau spent 2 years living close to nature in a cabin that he built himself. And this is a reconstruction of Thoreau's cabin there. And but here's another example of how literary fame gets kind of written into the landscape. Because there's the reconstruction of the cabin, and there's a very interesting sculpture of Thoreau himself, kind of looking at his hand. And of course, when you have this kind of stuff, it encourages people to be childish, right? Like me. And I couldn't help but think when I was there that maybe Thoreau wouldn't want to be remembered in this way. But anyway, there it is. And by the way, if you've read any of Walden, you know that Thoreau is very interested in hands, because he thinks that the shape of hands echoes the shape of all kinds of things in nature, and he sees humans as a part of nature, and that by making comparisons between different aspects of nature, humans, in a sense, become more themselves. And in a sense, merge with nature. So that's what Thoreau did at Walden Pond. And I can just show you some more pictures of the place. The next slide. So actually, what we have here is my kids playing in the rubble of the foundation, the actual foundation of Thoreau's cabin. And so the cabin is no longer standing, but the stones of the foundation of the cabin are still there in a pile. And it's very moving. People place their own stones on the top of this pile, with their names on them. And Thoreau is one of those singular works of American literature that has really become a work of world literature and has really changed people's lives.
Sorry, Professor. I just mentioned to the audience that it's called 湖滨散记in Chinese. So highly recommend. It's also travel literature as well.
It is travel literature, traveling at home in a sense, Thoreau said that he had spent a lot of time traveling in Concord, which is his hometown. And the idea is you can travel even in your hometown. Interesting idea.
Yes. I think there's some more, right?
Next slide. So I think Thoreau would want us to look at the pond and to use the pond rather than rebuilding his cabin or something like that. Because in fact, he didn't spend his whole life at Walden. After 2 years, he decided, I got to move on to other things. I have more lives to live. And there's something very special about the sky in the United States and in different parts of the U.S. I mean, look at those clouds. And I'm not sure if that's carrying over in the broadcast, but it's really, really stunning. And maybe one more slide. Here's another case of literature getting written into the landscape. Maybe the most famous lines from Walden. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. And I have to say I was quite moved when I saw that very familiar quote in this place.
So this is another.
Let's maybe we talk just a bit more about the Boston area, and then we can take some questions.
Yes,
sure.
So this is
this is a house called the Old Manse, which
this one here
dates from 1770, and it belonged to the grandfather of Ralph Waldo Emerson. Ralph Waldo Emerson's grandfather built the house, and he was a minister, and Emerson, who is of course a friend of Thoreau and one of the central figures, the central figure in American transcendentalism, this kind of nature philosophy during the Romantic period. Emerson lived in this house, There is a study up on, I think it's on the second floor, where he wrote the book Nature. And you couldn't take pictures inside the house, but I have to say, when I went into that room and I looked out the window, and I've taught and read the book Nature many times, and I really started to cry. I mean, it was, to actually see the world that he was looking out on, and just to be there, it felt like such a privilege. At any rate, after Emerson lived there, Nathaniel Hawthorne and his wife Sophia rented the house for a time. They actually never paid the rent, but they at any rate lived there. And a couple of stories that he wrote a bunch of stories in this house. Two of them that you might know are The Birthmark and Rappaccini's Daughter. Those are two books that you will find in the Norton Anthology of American literature. Yeah, so this is just a very, very special place. And Thoreau tended the garden on the grounds. He actually planted a garden for the Hawthorne. So you get a sense when you're there that all of these writers were actually interacting, and they all had such different perspectives, but they were together there in this place, and you feel it come to life when you're there. Yeah, and the place is also famous for historical landmark. If you could go to the next slide, please. Yeah, just facing like forward from where I'm standing in that picture, there is this bridge, which is actually where the first shots of the American Revolution in 1775 happened, right here. Yeah, and actually Emerson's grandfather was tending his cornfield when the revolution started, and his family was watching from the new house, the manse house. And so there's a monument there now, and
this obelisk?
There's the obelisk, and then further down there's a statue of an American soldier. If we could go to the next slide. And written on this, we can't see it clearly in the slide, but there is a part of a poem by Emerson. Emerson in the poem refers to the shot heard round the world, which is a very famous expression, the shot heard round the world, which suggests that the American Revolution was not just about America, but about a concept of democracy and liberty that is of world interest. And so, so again, we have a case of Emerson's words getting kind of not only remembered by people, but actually written into the landscape. Yeah. So yeah, those are some traveling I did. Oh, okay, one more. Yeah, just yes. You all know the poet Robert Frost, right?
Frost.
Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. That's stopping by woods on a snowy evening. Or maybe you know his poem, The Road Not Taken.
Yes.
Okay, maybe his most famous poem. Anyway, Frost, as you can see from the sign, lived in this house from 1900 to 1911, and this is when he was really getting his start as a poet. This is a place too where you can read the sign, but maybe you don't. It doesn't maybe totally hit you right away that all of these great works were inspired by this landscape. It maybe takes a little bit of time, but I was there with my wife and kids, and we walked around the grounds, and we found some apple trees. And actually, for me, the most impressive experience there was in the next slide. We picked some. There are my daughters in the background. Actually, we can have a close up of them. There they are. Okay, yeah. So these are some apples and also peaches that we picked on the grounds that that Frost once cultivated and was inspired by. So to me, more important than the sign was, was actually, connecting with the place in this way. Yeah, so I think sometimes you need to use your imagination and be creative when you go to tourist sites to make them kind of special for yourself.
I really like this image. So I think this is a good chance for us to answer some questions from the audience. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
So Iris, are there some questions?
Yes.
Yes.
A question from Xu Jiayu.
Jiayu, hi. Winnie, hi.
She asks,
Winnie, hi.
how often do you go back to America? Do your daughters also like literature?
Yeah, I go back to the States around once a year, usually for a conference or research.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I'll be going back there about 3 weeks from now to a conference in Pittsburgh, which is in western Pennsylvania. And it's a conference on Willa Cather. And actually, our host, Andrew, will also be at that conference, and maybe I'll see you there. Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay, we'll have to. Yeah, I'll say hi to you if I see you.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So,
will do.
but yeah, so I'll be going there solo, not with my family. But I go back with my family maybe once every 2 years because my parents are back. Actually, they're living now in the Boston area. Which is where we used to live, and then they lived in other places, but then they retired. After they retired, they eventually moved back there. So, yes.
And the second part of the question,
the second part of the question
is whether your daughters also love literature.
Oh yes, they do. Yeah, they both love to read. Sometimes on Saturday morning, I will get up and they're both already up and they're reading. I'm not making this up, actually. It's true. They're reading in Chinese, though. That's the thing. But my daughter has read all the Harry Potter novels in Chinese, and now she's going through them in English with my help and my wife's help.
Yes.
And
wonderful.
Yeah, and my younger daughter Florence also loves books, and Olana, my older daughter, is even now she's writing a story for a contest, and so we've been talking about the plot. Yeah, so, but my older daughter actually wants to be an artist. She's always drawing, and she would love to illustrate books, I think.
Oh.
Yeah. So.
And any others?
Yes.
Iris.
Question from Liu Yuxun.
Yuxun. Hello, Yuxun.
She asks, which state is your favorite and what makes it so special?
Yeah, that's a tough question because there are 50 states. I haven't been to all of them, but I don't know. The last I counted, I've been to over 30. I know that. And I think I have to say my favorite state is Massachusetts, which is, you just can't change your connection to the place that you're from. And I love the Boston area. I love where I grew up. There was a cow pasture in the back. There was a cow pasture in the front. So I grew up sort of wandering through the woods, and that's really just a part of my experience. And Boston is a great city. Other states that I love. Actually, I love the state of Utah. I've spent a lot of time there. My father taught in Utah for 20 years. It's in Utah that I first learned to downhill ski, which is a great experience. And Utah has all kinds of environment. In the north has snow and green mountains. In the south has desert and the most surreal kind of rock formations. And it's a really beautiful state. The landscape is amazing.
Maybe one more, and then we'll take a break.
A question from Yanru.
Yanru, hi Yanru. Thanks for watching.
Did these places you visit influence your thinking? Do you have any change because of visiting these places?
Yeah, I think you know, every place that I visit changes me in some way. I mean, obviously, by visiting Taiwan, I mean, it changed my life entirely because I came here, you know, just to try out the job, but then I stayed longer, and then I met my wife, and yeah, so now I'm settled here. So it, you know, it's become my life. But as far as places where I don't stay so long, but visit. Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes. If I could just give one example, but it has more to do with my work as a scholar. Some years ago, I went actually for 1 year to teach as a visiting professor at St. Vincent College in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, which is outside of Pittsburgh. And I really grew to love that part of Western Pennsylvania. And I got to know the city of Pittsburgh, which I'm going back to, and that's the place where one of the writers I studied, Willa Cather, that's where she began her literary career. And so anyway, I began sort of walking around the city and getting all kinds of ideas for kind of insights into the stories that she wrote about Pittsburgh. Yeah, so yeah, for me as a scholar, I think I'm very influenced by the sense of place, and it's one of the things I like to write about. Thank you for the question.
Yes, thank you. So now we're going to take a 5-minute break. We'll be right back. Thank you very much. Stay tuned.